Hello, alpha males. It's getting to be that time of year in a lot of the country. Leaves are changing color. The weather in a lot of places is magnificent. My favorite time of year, the fall, autumn. Sadly, I think in a lot of, well, at least this country in North America, we're kind of relegated to hunting big game in the autumn. Obviously, our ancestors must have hunted it year-round if they were going to subsist on it. But we generally are relegated to a couple of months, maybe a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of days in some places of big game hunting in the autumn, generally, maybe into winter. Anyway, this time of year harkens thoughts of walking quietly on leaves and stalking up on game and butchering animals, maybe sitting around the fire with friends or colleagues. Anyway, because it's that time of year, I'm going to put out this episode, originally recorded and put out last October 2021. It's on hunting. Hopefully you will enjoy it. It is a recast. If you don't know, because of studying analytics for whatever reason, whatever podcast, alpha male, gunfighter life, whatever the subject, it seems to be by far the most downloads are on Mondays, and there's far less on Fridays. For that reason, the plan has been for a little while, and probably will be this week, to put out 2 brand new episodes, one of Gunfighter Life, one of Alpha Male Podcast. On a Monday, put out a recast, is what I call it, a rerun of an older episode on Friday. Anyway, hope you enjoy it. If you do want to support the podcast, just pray for me. That'd be a great help. With that, men, I hope you enjoy. Hello, and welcome back to the Alpha Male Podcast. A podcast tribe, if you will, where we get together, strengthen each other. We don't apologize for what we are, strong, dominant alpha males. Today's episode is going to be on hunting. Hunting and how it pertains to manliness and its many different aspects and how it ties in to being an alpha. Before we get into that, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, leave a review of the podcast. If you want to check out more, I'm not going to mention all the different things, just go to goodshepherdtraining.com. I got a link to a bunch of different stuff on there if you want to support the podcast, if you want to check out some pictures, some more specialized stuff like that. Contact me. Again, that's goodshepherdtraining.com. With that, guys, I'll plug in the bio, and I just redid it, so if you've heard the other one, you may want to listen to this one, maybe not. If you want to skip it, generally skip to around 4 minutes. That should get you pretty close to the topic. Who am I? First and foremost, I am a Christian, and I don't apologize for that. That's number one in my life in everything that I do, and that's the manliest thing about me. I am made in the image of God, strong, powerful, dominant, and I follow the ultimate alpha male, Jesus Christ. As far as background, I grew up fairly simple in the southeastern United States, hunting and fishing. Grew up fairly monetarily poor. I joined the Marine Corps at 17. I'm a combat veteran. Did a couple of tours in Iraq. After that, I was an urban warfare instructor for the United States Marine Corps. I also served on the LAPD. Worked regular assignments and more specialized assignments. I've also been a private contractor for a 3-letter government agency I won't specify. In addition to that, I've also served the United States Army, both full-time and part-time National Guard. My primary MOS in the Marine Corps, 0351, Infantry Assaultman. My primary MOS in the Army, 11 Bravo, Infantry. I started competition shooting even before I joined the Marine Corps at 17. In fact, I already had been a state champion gold medalist before joining the Marine Corps. Very blessed with the talents God's given me. I've competed in many things and won more competitions than I can remember, including a couple of state championships, 1 regional championship, and 3rd place in a national ranking. Most of my competition wins are in handgun, but I've also competed in rifle, precision rifle. That's how I cut my teeth. I've also competed in archery and shotgun and muzzleloader and even hatchet throwing, knife throwing. I've been very blessed with those talents. And as Jesus says, to he who has more shall be given, and he will have in abundance. I try to use the talents God's given me. I have been a professional big game hunter and guide. slaying bison and elk and all manner of beast. In addition, I've been the commander of a tactical team. Commanding that unit, our primary job to stop active shooters in a fairly large metropolitan area. To ask what I do, I guess I would say that, first and foremost, I'm a servant of God, a follower of Jesus, a preacher and teacher and leader of men. With that, guys, we'll roll into today's episode. Alright, guys, with that, let's get into today's topic. As you heard in the bio, I have hunted from a very early age. Some of my earliest and fondest memories are of hunting. I've been very blessed by God to hunt all over this beautiful country. I've hunted everything from white-tailed deer on the east coast to mule deer on the west coast, gray squirrel on the east coast to prairie dogs on the west coast. I've been very blessed to slay wolves and bear and elk and bison, all manner of exotic animals that hearken from all over the world. Not many people today can say they've professionally hunted buffalo or been a professional big game guide, but I'm blessed to say that I have been one. And as I'm sitting outside tonight, a little after midnight in the dark, in my long sleeve 100% merino wool shirt, I'm a little chilly, and that chilly air has me thinking about hunting. We're men here, and men sometimes sit around and tell stories, as they've done for ages and ages. Let me tell you a few stories, hunting tales. Are you familiar with the term memory burn? I have this memory burned in from when I was a child, very young. I don't remember what age I was, but I remember this hunt. Like I said, I grew up fairly means in the South. This takes place in the woods of Virginia. My uncle often took me hunting, and he had a single-shot muzzleloader. If you're not super familiar with guns, one of the old school guns that you load from the front with a ramrod, you pour in the powder, put in your round ball or your mini ball, you tamp it down, you get one shot. Now, we all know that memory is not perfect, and I've recounted this memory in my brain I don't know how many times over the past, more than 20 years. I remember it was cold that morning, and I don't remember feeling cold, but I remember seeing, memory is correct, steam coming out of this buck's nostrils as it trotted across the area that had just been cut down for logging, and there were still some trees standing, some trees fallen. The buck comes walking across. I remember him moving, and I remember taking careful aim with this one shot that I had with this archaic black powder muzzle-loading rifle. I remember firing and getting a good hit for this deer taking off running, but it was running with its head down, I assume from blood loss, and it ran and ran and ran and smacked into a tree and fell over. I can still to this day recount those moments in my mind. I couldn't even honestly tell you that I remember my first kiss, but I remember that. Let me tell you about another memory, much more recent. I was a professional big game hunter. I was out hunting buffalo. A very nice older gentleman. It was an archery hunt, bow and arrow. It means we had to get close. The weather was beautiful. We were hunting the alpha male of this herd, the biggest, dominant male. A giant beast of an animal. Strong, powerful. Now, a male buffalo can weigh up to 2,000 pounds. I don't know how big this one was, but he was big. Many times more than this man and I put together. And we had come upon this herd earlier in the hunt, and we had spooked them. But it took some time and some searching. This area was patchy forest with some small open fields. I would walk ahead as the guide, and I would spot for these buffalo, for this herd, for this dominant male. And after a while, I found him. I called the hunter over, and we put the stalk on, stalking these beasts. They knew something was up. From earlier that day, an animal that had been hunted by man for thousands of years. Now, buffalo are not always like other animals when they get frightened. Sometimes they run away. Sometimes they stand and fight. Well, this dominant male stood in front, facing us. He was out of bow range. And we waited and waited, and if we tried to get closer, he wouldn't let us. Like, he would back up and face us and move the herd. Well, with a bow, you want a broadside shot, meaning you want the animal facing sideways to you to get a good, clean kill shot with a bow. So we waited and waited. We sat. And then, by God's grace, it started to rain. And it rained pretty hard, and it was pretty loud, especially falling on dry leaves. So we got down on hands and knees and got down and walked down into this little ravine, this little gully. On our hands and knees, we walked up this hill. He had his bow, and I had with an arrow knocked in it, and I had a backup arrow for him in case something went wrong or he could get a follow-up shot with that arrow. And we crawled hand to knee up this little knoll in the rain, and falling all around us, masking our smell, masking our sound. And this big, massive male buffalo finally turned. We were getting closer, and part of my job as the guide was to call out distance. He knew where to aim and where his arrow would fall. Called out the distance, and we were 30-something yards away, which is a pretty decent bow shot. 30-something yards was my guess. And he let this arrow fly. And once again, talking about memory burn, I remember seeing this arrow fly through the air. I remember seeing its fletchings. I remember seeing exactly where it hit on that buffalo. A great shot. I remember seeing it sink in. I remember seeing this massive beast take off and it just spewed blood. So much blood it looked like it was painting the forest floor red. Ran in a big circle, and it got in concentrically smaller and smaller circles until it stood there, and you could see it was getting weak, and then it collapsed. Genesis 19. The fear and dread of you will fall upon all the beasts of the earth, and on all the birds in the sky, and on every creature that moves along the ground, and on all the fish in the sea. They are given into your hands. Genesis 19. And we know that God expected people to hunt, because he says in Leviticus 17, whatever man of the children of Israel, or the strangers who dwell among you, who hunts and catches any animal or bird that may be eaten, he shall pour out its blood and cover it with dust. We've talked a little bit about hunt and hunting stories. What does it have to do with being a man, with being an alpha male? Well, I think there's several facets of this. And one of those is just getting outside and being in nature. Getting outside, getting a little wild, getting dirty. Disconnecting from your phone and being online and the messages and the Instagram and the Facebook and the emails and the constant clicks and buzzes and whistles of chatter. Jarring, unnatural urban environment that a lot of us spend our time in, moving from one box to another. The box we live in, to the box we drive in, to the box we work in. Getting away from the boxes and getting outside in an open sky. Instead of being closed in on every side, a few feet away. Open sky. Environment without borders. To me, that does something good for the soul. That alone is reason enough. Now, hunting is not just out killing. In fact, a lot of the times you go out, you don't get an opportunity to shoot anything. That's fine. You are outside, in nature, in God's creation. Psalms 19, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows us his handiwork. Get out there, enjoy it. For years, I've been stuck in an urban environment a lot of the time. As I alluded to in my bio, the commander of a tactical team to stop active shooters. Shooters generally happen in an urban environment, and I think that was a noble, worthwhile goal. That team and build that team, and to be ready to stop active shooters, to stop that evil. Noble pursuit, I believe, but that required me to spend a lot of my time in an urban area. But it's nice to escape and get out in the woods, get out in the whatever environment is close to you that you can get out. It's the ocean, the desert, or the mountains, or the forest, or the prairie. It's one facet. Well, that ties into manliness. Why I think hunting is important, and it's something you should look at and consider. The next thing I would say is testing yourself as a man. Give God all the glory. Whatever success I have, credit to Him. Whatever skill or talent or discipline I have is only because He gave it to me. What do I have that I did not first receive? A man, the weapon versus his prey. You in your senses versus an animal. Actually, an animal like a deer, used to being hunted. Pitting your senses against its senses. To a better predator, a better hunter than it is of eluding you. Also predator hunting, as I've alluded to. I've slain bears and wolves, coyote, and it's predator versus predator. It's a predator that makes its, just say, living, sustains itself by hunting and killing, and you hunt and kill it. If that doesn't call to your manliness deep down. Now the Bible calls David a man after his own heart, and we learn in the Bible that David killed these kind of predators and beasts as a shepherd. Another thing, pitting yourself against nature, but being able to thrive in nature. The most dangerous thing is not the prey or the predator, it's just the elements. I could tell you a story about that, but I'll make it brief. One of the times I came the closest to dying while hunting, from a lion, a tiger, or a bear, walking at night and falling off a cliff, in the middle of the wilderness. Now, challenging oneself is not only done in hunting, but it certainly can be done in hunting. Another way this pertains to manliness, mastering a weapon. I think as a man, you ought to be able to handle a weapon, at least most men. Jesus not tell his disciples, he who has no sword, let him sell his garment, his cloak, and buy one? And that in the Gospel of Luke. I encourage you to carry a gun for defense if you're able and willing. If you feel called to. You could start there, and you could start with hunting and go there, or vice versa. But being a man and mastering a weapon, whether it's a rifle or a shotgun, or a handgun, or a bow and arrow, or a rock. Hunting can help you gain proficiency with a weapon. Another thing, another aspect of this, I think hunting and how it pertains to manliness is self-sufficiency, self-reliance. You might have guessed from my background and me talking, I'm kind of into survival and what people call now prepping. I think survivalist is a better term because I think we're all kind of survivalists if you're listening to this. Because by God's grace we've all survived this long. Just give more focus to it than others. But self-sufficiency, being able to put meat on the table literally, to be able to go to the store and buy food. Go to the store and buy food. Also great to grab a weapon, go out in the woods, kill a beast, carve it up, and throw it on the table like a man and eat it. Apologize for that. You shouldn't either. If you eat meat, that animal got killed somehow. Instead of always parsing that out to somebody else and giving somebody else the responsibility for shedding that blood, how about you get out there and get your hands bloody and shed some blood and put some meat on the table like a man? Self-sufficiency. Even if you don't do it all the time, the ability to know that you can put food on the table as a man to provide for yourself and your family and those who can't. Like a man, an alpha male. And yet another facet of this, how this can help. People think of hunting, they often think of the chase and the shot, which is great. That's part of the hunt. That's a great part of the hunt. But a lot of hunting comes after that animal is on the ground. Talk about the amount of work when you're standing over an elk or a buffalo or even a deer and you're miles in the backcountry. Now a buffalo's heart alone is about the size of my head. May not weigh as much because it doesn't have bone in it, but if that gives you an idea of the size, let alone its liver, which both are delicious, by the way. When you realize you have to move that animal, there's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of other skills that go into that. Packing, rucking as they call it in the Army, humping as they call it in the Marine Corps, moving weight on your back. Something men have been doing for thousands of years. Also, some of the parts of the hunt that I really enjoy is butchering that meat up, cutting it up into steaks, making sausage with it, mixing different herbs and spices and olive oil in with it, either making patties or grinding it up to make burgers. How about making jerky? Making jerky's awesome. Sometimes if I get a couple of deer, I might turn almost all of one into jerky. Also, biltong. If you don't know about biltong, it's like jerky's older brother. It's big, thick, dried out hunks of meat. Think, the size of your hand or bigger. I like mine in salt and vinegar. You can make them all kinds of ways, put all kinds of spices on there. But it's just a way, I believe, that comes from Africa to preserve meat. And you can do it in a lot bigger chunks than you can with jerky. And you don't have to get it in a bag covered with sugar and preservatives like you get beef jerky or whatever at the store. You can make it the way you want it. With some garlic or some ghost pepper or some rosemary or whatever you want. You can invite a bunch of your friends over and roast an entire leg of an animal and cut hunks of it off and you guys can eat it in fellowship. There's a lot more to the hunt than just firing a shot. With that, I'd like to talk about some men we might think of as alpha males that were hunters. This by no means is an all-inclusive list. This is just some. How about George Washington? How about John F. Kennedy? How about Theodore Roosevelt? How about Ernest Hemingway? Winston Churchill? Davy Crockett? Daniel Boone? William Buffalo Bill Cody? Those and many others. I'm not saying you have to hunt to be an alpha male, but I'm saying plenty of alpha males do. I'd like to touch briefly on some criticisms or some pushback you often get as a hunter from people who don't hunt. So let's say something like, going out and shooting Bambi with a rifle, how hard can that be? Number one, the easiest hunt I've ever been on is far harder than going to the drive-thru at McDonald's and ordering a hamburger. That cow died too. You just paid somebody else to do it. A lot of people base that on going to their local park or suburb and seeing what I would kind of call semi-tame or pet deer. Or the one time they went into a park somewhere, like a national park, and saw a deer. They're used to people, a deer that doesn't get hunted. Even then, they don't think about all the times they went in the woods and the hours they've been in the woods and haven't seen a deer, or haven't gotten close enough to a deer to shoot it. So when somebody criticizes you, I guess you'd ask them if they've ever done it and just leave it there. Like telling somebody you run a marathon. They come back with, I drove 30 miles to work today, it didn't seem that hard. It's similar when they say that hunting's not that hard. I don't generally see a good argument for people that eat meat but are against hunting. Those animals live a far better life. See how cows are raised for slaughter and how chickens are raised, shoved together in houses thousands at a time in their own feces. I don't even really understand the vegetarian. They go out and pick all their food themselves, because if they eat corn or wheat or soy, that used to be forest. Somebody killed all those animals to plant that food there. Soybean fields don't just grow naturally. You know what they do to the animals that go in there and destroy those soybean crops? They kill them. So instead of apologizing for it, stand up and have dominion over your environment. Don't be afraid to kill an animal and eat it. Don't apologize for it either. Now, before you start coming up with all kinds of reasons and justifications in your own mind of why you can't hunt, I'd say check yourself and see whether that's a beta male move or not. You see, we often think about the early pioneers in America as, great hunters and trappers and fishermen, and likely many of them were. You have to remember, when they came here from Europe, their descendants from England, from France. The majority of the common men in those countries grew up in urban areas, peasants or serfs or whatever you want to call them, and likely many of them had never hunted before in their life. Some of them may have, poached the king's deer or whatever. That wouldn't surprise me. But they had to learn to hunt. The first Jamestown settlement, many of them died. I had heard this before and I just pulled it up, and the first thing that comes up, 38 out of the original 104 survived. Those men didn't have those skills, and they had to adapt in a very harsh time. Those survivors could do it. You can also learn to hunt. Thinking of why you can't or all the obstacles, again, check those beta male thoughts and think of how you can do it. Perhaps it's time to take off those skinny jeans, put down the soy latte, grab a pair of boots and a canteen, and head out to the wilderness and kill something and eat it. Some ways you might be able to do this that you may not have thought of. Now, you may have guessed from my background that I like guns. I like to hunt with guns. Modern firearms, we'll say. But there are many other ways to hunt. Hunting with a bow, I also like archery. Hunting with a slingshot. Hunting with a blowgun. Hunting with an air rifle. There may be some legitimate obstacles as to why you can't hunt with a gun. Not excuses, but legit reasons, like if you're not yet 18 and your parents will not get you a gun. They don't allow guns in the house and you're supposed to honor your father and mother. I killed my first bear with a bow when I was 16. You get a bow and practice with it. About a blowgun, I've hunted with a blowgun successfully. I don't say this to brag, but I've even hunted with a rock successfully. As an alpha male, don't make excuses, get out there and get stuff done. I should mention that check what's legal in your area, but a good place to start, my advice would not be with big game. But you can start with small game, and a lot of places have invasive species. One that stands out to me is a Eurasian collared dove. I don't know that they taste any different, be able to perceive any difference in taste. They're delicious. But they're an invasive species if you live here in America, assuming you're here in America. The Eurasian collared dove. Invasive species, a lot of time they have pretty liberal seasons, if any at all. Delicious. Put some cream cheese and jalapenos on them, or however you want to cook them. Delicate, you can even clean them and breast them out with just your hands, without even using a knife. You can just rip them apart, take the meat out, make some soup or something. Bow fishing for an invasive carp species. Blowgun hunting for, a Eurasian collared dove. Or starlings are also an invasive species from Europe. See where you're at, if there's any laws or limits on those. So before, this is not just pertaining to hunting, but as an alpha male in general, stop thinking of why you can't and start looking for how you can get it done. And don't forget what I would consider the cousins of hunting, fishing and trapping. You can trap with a snare pretty easily, just either a piece of string or a piece of wire depending on your quarry. We live in an age where you can get on YouTube and look up all kinds of stuff. YouTube can be used for a lot of wasting of time and a lot of useless stuff, but can also be a great resource, a better resource than this because it's visual, to look in how to set snares. And check what's legal, check what you have to be licensed for in your area. Snares can be done depending on your quarry, like I said, with a piece of string or with that, picture frame wire that you can get at Dollar Tree or a dollar store. So with a knife, you can get out there and turn a stick into a stake and get a piece of wire or a piece of string. Catch something with a rock, you can kill it and eat it. Doesn't take a whole lot of material possessions to get that done. People have been doing it for thousands of years, and you can do it too. With that, I want to say thank you for listening to this episode of the Alpha Male Podcast. I'm honored and humbled that you give this portion of your time. With that, guys, if you want to find out more, you can go to goodshepherdtraining.com. If you have any feedback about the podcast, if you contact me or train with me, if you want to support on Patreon, I'll post some pictures on Patreon of some of the hunts I talked about. You can check those out if you're a visual person and you want to become a Patreon member for $1. You can check out some of those pictures. So I posted pictures for patrons of the muzzleloading buck story that I talked about. Posted a picture of me with a fallow buck, which is like a Viking stag. Picture of me blessed to take my wife on her first successful big game hunt, Texas Doll Sheep. And pictures of the buffalo hunt, and pictures of my first archery bear kill that I was blessed with. If you want to check that stuff out, as well as some other cool insider content on the Patreon page, go ahead and sign up if you want to support. If not, no worries. Feel free to listen for free and don't feel guilty about it. Again, to check out more, go to goodshepherdtraining.com. You can also check out the other podcasts, Simple Man Sermons if you care about the important stuff, and Gunfighter Life if you want to learn or if the gun stuff interests you. You can also go in and check the archives of Alpha Male and Gunfighter Life for more on hunting. A few other housekeeping things. If you haven't noticed, guys, I've gone through some audio changes. Been really trying for you guys to get the audio quality better. I used to just, for years, talk into my iPhone and upload it, no editing, no nothing. I'm trying to learn that. I appreciate your patience when I'm doing that. I know the audio quality is not outstanding, but hopefully it's getting better. The other thing, by the grace of God, my wife's job went fully remote earlier this month. There's a big tether holding me here in Las Vegas. Now I'm very much looking forward to getting out of this city. If you know any other job opportunities that I might be suited for, give me a shout out. I'm sure God will provide, but who knows, maybe He'll provide through one of the listeners. With that, guys, thanks for listening to the end of the episode. Time for the tactical tip. Tactical tip today could apply to hunting or hiking or any other number of things. Tactical tip is Zote. It's a soap. It's spelled Z-O-T-E. I believe it's made in Mexico. Not made like a lot of the more modern soaps are, a byproduct of the military-industrial complex made out of all kinds of chemicals. No, I don't think I need to explain that. I'm not a hippie. If I could choose between harsh chemicals or a soap made with animal fat, which this is, pick that. It's a great soap. It's good for clothes, good for washing yourself. It's made for clothes, but I use it on my skin. I've never had any issues. You do what you want. But the cool thing about it is it's made with citronella, and citronella is a natural bug repellent. And stuff doesn't cost a ton of money. So if you can use it and get bug repellent in it, and it's a made from animal fat product, why not? So wash your clothes with that. A little tip here, at Walmart or probably some other places, they make these little bracelets in the camping section. Bracelets, anklets, whatever. They're also coated with citronella. Take those, put them on your wrists, put them on your ankles. Wear boots, you can do like we used to do in the Marine Corps. You can take and fold your pants up inside there and put them over your boots like a blousing garter to hopefully stop ticks and jiggers and all kinds of insects from crawling up your legs when you're out in the woods and wilderness. So that's your tactical tip for the day, guys. Thanks for listening. I really do appreciate you guys. Have a blessed day.